Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, Emily Sophia, aka M Mighty Sophia, here to break down for you all the pilot episode, which is entitled The Original, of HBO's Westworld. We are indeed on Season 1, Episode 1. This is going to be a very spoiler-filled review, I shall warn you. But before we dive into the thick of things, where the spoilers will be, for those of you who are trying to decide if this show really is living up to the hype, if it really is worth your time, if it really is or could possibly be the new Game of Thrones, well, I'm going to tell ya, this show is a beast of its own, and it is something of magnificence and complexity and just raw, unabashed terror is what I can tell you, okay? So please, by all means, give this episode a shot and see where it takes you, because we are hopping aboard an existential roller coaster of anarchy and nihilism and chaos and creation and, a little bit of everything under the sun. This hour and 15-minute or so episode is proof alone that HBO is going to be sitting pretty long after Game of Thrones is off the docket. Let me tell you, if this is any indication of what's to come, they ain't going to have to worry about a thing. So now I am going to dive into the analysis. Of course, any details that I happen to miss, I encourage, nay, I implore you to bring up those details in the comments below, because I am but one human being in what is ostensibly the real world. And, my brain can only work so well. So let me break down for you my thoughts, quick synopsis of major points. First and foremost, I just have to say, what a mesmerizing cast. I am in love with Anthony Hopkins, as are, I think, many people in the world. His performance as Hannibal and countless other roles have made him a serious A-lister. He is a force to be reckoned with, and I think that the show is going to make incredible use of his talents. We also have the likes of Ed Harris as the menacing man in black. We have Evan Rachel Wood as Dolores Abernathy, who we discover is the oldest of the hosts in Westworld, which was quite an interesting and scary revelation, because she is the one who has the most prior experiences. She's been through the most builds, and now that this reverie code has been brought into play, what types of epiphanies is she going to have? Is she going to buck the system? For whom is she going to cause the most problems and chaos, and on what scale? But I have to linger on the character of Dolores, because she's quite a center point of the pilot episode, and Evan Rachel Wood plays her to utter perfection. We see the incarnation of Dolores, the host, in the real world, where she is being interviewed by the creators, by the staff of Westworld, to basically ensure that she's not gonna let all hell break loose on those who have paid so dearly to get the immersive experience of a lifetime. And just in the way that her gaze is just lost in the oblivion, and the way that she rehearses these lines, but yet every time we see that there is a slight shift. There is something that is off with every repetition. And in this case, in the pilot of Westworld, repetition is an incredible instrument and catalyst of terror and of suspense and tension. And I think that honestly is what makes this episode of television probably one of my favorite maiden voyages that I have ever witnessed on the small screen. I know that a lot of people already have been waxing poetic about this show, and I just gotta tell you, this comes from a place of genuine sincerity and from a place of being a person who loves thought-provoking dramas. I seriously feel like this alone makes Westworld a contender for one of my favorite shows of all time. I'm saying that now, and I'm hoping it's not going to come back to bite me in the ass further down the line. But nonetheless, I feel pretty confident at this point. So, and kudos to Evan Rachel Wood, who just puts on such a devastating performance, knowing that this host, this creation is struggling for a sense of truth. And we know that at some point she's going to start digging deeper into that, especially now that she along with some of the other hosts can access these memories and other nuances of their experiences. And she could very well reach a breaking point like her father, Peter Abernathy. The actor portraying him, I do not know his name, but it was so impressive to see how he had to compose himself like this breaking, crazed android. I mean, how much fun is that gotta be, you know? How much fun would it be to be in this show? I can't even fathom. And well, they got a pretty hefty little budget there too, so they're getting all the works, let me just say. But again, this show has talent to spare, talent to burn, as it were. But yeah, let's talk really quickly. I'm just going to be kind of hopping and skipping all over the place, as you could probably already tell. I love the opening sequence as we get the opening credits. I think that it really beautifully shows the intricacies of creation and this manufactured reality that is Westworld. Seeing that skeleton playing the piano and these machines unspooling flesh and the powerful musculature of horses, and it's very heady, lofty stuff. But I honestly feel like it's surprisingly accessible given the complexity of the subject matter and ideas that they're working with. And we get the idea that this is an incredibly dichotomous, alternate, dystopian world without feeling too overwhelmed. You know, I was honestly expecting even more exposition in this episode, but we spend more time immersed in the Westworld frontier and seeing things from the perspective of the hosts and then the guests or the newcomers. And it's really interesting too, because beginning there, we're kind of trying to figure out who's who. You know, I actually thought there was a time at one point in the episode, I thought that the man in black was actually one of the hosts gone awry. But as it turns out, is a man who is vying to understand the vision of the creator, who is Dr. Robert Ford, and his associate, whose last Bernard. Bernard Lowe. So they kind of are the masterminds of this whole operation, and I'm sure that we're going to get lots of fun scenes of Anthony Hopkins unspooling that vision for all of us to understand, slowly but surely. It's just incredible the ideas that they managed to synthesize into this show, and the sense of horror that they manage to evoke at every turn. And it's so interesting how we also get to see that the guests, the stakeholders, the managers, everyone has a different agenda with Westworld, of course. And I think that that very fact, that very concept is going to be what's going to keep the show alive and momentous in hopefully the years to come, assuming that all goes well. But yeah, so I think that ostensibly every season could kind of be exploring a new facet, a new layer of what Westworld even is. Because for the guests whose pockets are apparently deep enough to grant them access to this kind of experience, it's all about vicarious thrill. And more scarily so, wish fulfillment, as we see when the narrative is changed, when, what's his name, Sizemore, one of the writers, constructors, whatever role you want to call him, he introduces this new story where Hector, the big baddie, shows up in town, and he and his gunslingers have a heyday, and there's blood everywhere, and madness, and eloquent speeches and action and all of this extraordinary stuff. And then, of course, the guests take advantage of this experience and, have this knee-jerk reaction. One of them kills the major bad guy and his fellow thief. And all of a sudden we see, like, okay, Sizemore is one of the creators in this experience, and he is as invested in experiencing the vicarious thrill of Westworld as the guests are. So I think that there's going to be a lot of push and pull. There's going to be a bit of an inter-reality tug-of-war that's going on, and that to me is just... it's so freaking fascinating. This is just the perfect idea for a show. And already the execution is great. The cinematography is breathtaking. We have all these spinning, panning shots. Oh gosh, I forget what the filming location is. In the, I assume Southwest America, somewhere. Is glorious and beautiful, and yet at the same time remains so horrifying when you see what looks like this vast, beautiful expanse where Dolores goes to paint every day, and all of the townsfolk go about their lives, and it's just so idyllic. And of course this would be the kind of place that somebody would want to escape to. But then when you zoom out and you picture it as just this little snow globe, that somebody can shake up, as they've already been doing, it's scary. Like, this is going to be a great horror show on top of being a sci-fi thriller, on top of being this sort of alternative Western. There are so many genres that get combined into this kind of idea, which, of course, I should mention is birthed from a 1973 film, or 1974? It was early 1970s, by the creator of Jurassic Park, also called Westworld. I've never seen that movie. And if any of you guys have, I would love to know if it is worthwhile, especially given a pilot episode of this caliber. But yeah, so I'm going to dip back into the characters for a quick minute. Teddy is also a very interesting point, and I think that his character is going to get kind of caught up in trying to unravel the truth of their reality by his proximity, of course, to Dolores, who is just this cauldron of past lives, and who has been pulled apart and stitched back together so many times that you would think that she's brand new, when in fact she poses the greatest threat to this kind of immersive fantasy land than anybody else, just by virtue of her being there the longest and having seen as much as she has. And just knowing that all of the hosts have those layers and experiences to pull back through. I think inevitably as the chaos begins to reach a fever pitch, we could see all of these hosts breaking out and doing insane and increasingly insane things throughout the series. So that is fabulous to me. Anyways, with Teddy, I totally thought initially that he was one of the guests, you know? Because when he first sees Dolores, it's like, oh, you came back. And at first I wasn't exactly sure how it all worked, but then, you know, you learn that generally the memories are purged, but now there's kind of an arrow that the host can use to pierce through all these layers and to hold them captive and to move through them, much like Peter Abernathy does, you know, when he goes from being the guy who tends his cattle and looks after his family to quoting very menacing Shakespeare. And you know, everything from these violent delights have violent ends to you know, the whole "I will have such revenges on you," and oh god, so chilling, so chilling, so great. I think that the show has already struck a really good balance between reality and the fantasy worlds, and the way that we have moved between those has not been overly complex. And a show like this could so easily just careen into absolute insanity. Like a show of this caliber, you could potentially get a master's or doctoral degree in, but I think that things are just accessible enough thus far that's not going to be a problem. And I think that that's going to contribute to what I imagine is going to be Westworld's success. I can't speak for everybody. I didn't sit down to read other reviews before I started this one. But yeah, it's fabulous. I love the idea of the way that narratives are used to create this cohesive experience. But then as they're trying to, the creators of Westworld are trying to evolve their creations, they also have to pull back, and there's all this risk associated with progress, which is kind of the hallmark of so many sci-fi horror films and novels and other forms of media and stories, you know. That idea that the further that you know, the more that humans try to attain godliness in the sense of being creators, the more chaos ensues, and that is the fun. You know, it's kind of Frankenstein stuff on a whole nother level, and a very exhilarating one at that. Now, I should comment too on the score, which was quite interesting, because when we see the showdown with the Desperado and his band of other renegades, they definitely did an orchestral version of Painted Black by the Rolling Stones. That could not have been coincidence. It seemed like a very faithful adaptation of that song. It was very fun. Yeah, like the music was used in interesting ways to heighten the mood at different points, but it wasn't too heavy-handed either, I think. So that was really fantastic as well. It's also neat to think about Westworld as a way by which its creators are expressing or dwelling upon their sins and their own desires, you know, because in order to be in a position to facilitate this kind of experience for others, you have to have a bit of that madness within yourself, as is evidenced by the creators infusing the storylines with bloodshed and with depravity, and it's absolutely cruel. But then again, so are those who are coming to experience this world, and they want to act out their cruelty in ways that real society would not permit them to. So it's all very complex and heady and enthralling stuff that makes you think and fear and feel, and it's so messy and delightful, and I love it. I love it. There's so much more that I could get into. But at this point, I think I'm going to go ahead and draw this review to a close. So please, please lavish upon me all of your thoughts and reactions and analyses. I'd love to hear them. Thank you so much for tuning into this very long-winded review. I most recently did a full season 1 review of Penny Dreadful, which I'm watching for the first time. I've also recently reviewed shows such as Preacher and Stranger Things. So if those happen to be up your alley, then come hang out in mine. We'll get together. So yeah, lots of TV talk. I will be back with the next episode of Westworld, so if you enjoyed, let's hang out again. You guys take care, and as always, I will be back before you know it.